Hey everyone, this is Tom from Cerulean Bay, and we are back with Tropical Escapes at Home. And today is just such a really cool episode because we've got a guest here, a master landscape architect who is also an award winning author. And he is going to tell us a little bit about what he does and recommendations for those of you who live in cold climates. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Matthieu Mehuys from Belgium. And what's really cool about that is people in Europe are known for traveling. So this guy is going to really be able to tell you what works and what doesn't work in the tropics versus these places in the colder climates. So Matthew, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, Tom, thank you very much. Thank you, first of all, for having me. I'm very excited to be on your show and talk about how people can create like a tropical feeling in their life because everybody, well, if you've been to the tropics to visit, you're like, oh, I want to have all these plants at my home, right? Like, because they're so
Exactly.
lush and the leaves are so beautiful. So I'm very excited to dive into giving some practical tips today on how people can actually do that also in colder climates. And as a matter of fact, we even focus on that. Especially we do that for small city gardens because it also has
Hmm.
a microclimate which has like less limitations because it's usually warmer in city environments. So if you have like a backyard garden, then that's already more a microclimate. And also because when you have a small space, you want to maximize the experience, right? And there's a few plants that look like they're tropical, but they're not, that we then specifically use to have that look and feel of something that is very abundant. And there's a few tropical plants that even grow in our environments. Yeah.
Oh,
So I'm excited
okay.
about
Well,
that.
yeah, well, that's awesome. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your background and how you even came to know about all of
Yes.
this?
So thank you, Tom. That's a good question. So I grew up on a family farm. My father is a farmer. My brother is a farmer still today. And when I was about 3 to 5 years old, I became extremely fascinated with plants. Like I was like, how on earth is it possible if you have a little seed, you put it in the soil, it can become a beautiful plant, or in some cases like a huge tree.
Hmm?
Like how is that? How on earth is that possible? So that was like a 3 to 5 year old person that was thinking about that. And then by the time I got 6 years old, I told my parents I want to start my own vegetable garden because on our farm we were mostly producing cattle and cash crops. So not so much vegetables, but I felt like, oh, I want to grow my own food. And then I did. I started out with growing some radishes, which is fairly easy. And then I thought like, wow, it's so easy to create my own vegetable garden. And I continued and I started to plant a bunch of other things, but I had no clue what I was doing. I just thought like I had early
Yeah.
success with radishes. So I thought this is super easy gardening. I'll just try a bunch of other stuff. But then my whole garden was completely overgrown by weeds. And that was devastating
Uh,
for me. And I didn't understand why. And actually, this is me looking backwards. That was actually the start for me to really understand how does nature work. Because if you can understand how nature works, you can become so much more efficient at anything that's outdoors related in your own environment. So
mhm,
you can become a low maintenance gardener without having to compromise the beautification or even the amount of plants. So
mhm.
that was like what I got fascinated about. And then later I have a bachelor and a master degree in landscape architecture. I studied in Belgium, in Germany. I worked in several countries like Saudi Arabia. I traveled the world. And then from all of that experience where I was actually in the Ecuadorian rainforest, which was one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever had.
Oh,
Like I was so inspired by that. But from that experience, I got dengue, which is like a kind of malaria disease.
oh,
Very
yeah, I know someone that had that.
yeah, and for me that was a wake
It's
up call
awful.
from nature, saying like that's how I like to interpret it. Is like okay, you've traveled, you've done some work, you studied. Now it's time for you to like bring all your
Yeah.
knowledge and give it to the people, right? Give it to clients. So from
Mhm.
pretty much also losing all my money because I was traveling for such a long time and being really sick, and I even got dumped by my girlfriend at that time. I
Oh,
was really like down in the gutter, but I took it as like an opportunity to really start dedicating my life to helping people how to become
yeah.
self-sufficient gardeners. And self-sufficient gardeners can be pretty much anything. It can be if you want to focus on growing your own food, great. If that's your vision, I can help you with
Mhm,
that. But if you're like, I don't
mhm.
care about growing food, I'll go to a farmer or the groceries to buy it. Then you don't have to become a vegetable grower. You can focus on
Yeah,
beautification or flowers, or maybe in your case, Tom, is to create a tropical looking garden, right? And probably for your listeners
exactly.
as well. So that's like, long story short, how I became
Hmm.
a landscape architect, and I'm now, yeah, dedicating my life. Also because I really, one of my missions like my long term mission in life is that we have this precious planet. It's so beautiful, but
Hmm.
we only have one of it. Like, they haven't found another planet that is similar, even close to the one we are living on. So we should do a lot
Exactly.
of effort to keep it like that. And with a lot of influences around pollution, climate change, whether or not you believe in it, like, we
Hmm.
have to focus on making sure that the next generations can continue to live on our planet, because there's a lot of things that are wrong, both with pollution resulting in
Yeah.
cancer, food systems that are completely broken down, cancer. Like, there's so many modern diseases as well related to how we eat, and also even how we garden, because a lot of gardens are packed with chemicals. So
Oh,
yeah,
exactly.
that,
Yeah, I
yeah,
was going to say that with the chemicals, because there are some people that have no problem using them, the weed killers and all of this, and then other people who, for a variety of reasons, won't use any of that, whether it's for health reasons or because they don't want to be polluting the
yep.
planet or they have allergies to it or something. That you actually brought up a good
Mhm.
point when you mentioned you were growing the garden and it got overtaken by weeds,
Mhm.
because in the tropical climates, and I see this here in Houston, I mean, the weeds will grow a foot a day where what you're trying to grow won't grow, and then the weeds are there. Or you have such a nice garden all year long, and then winter comes and everything freezes except the weed. It's like, why don't the weeds ever?
Well, we could talk
And
about
then
that
people,
today as well, because the weeds are, I give a lot of public speaking as well, and I always say weeds are actually here to help us. They're not our evil enemy. Weeds are telling you something about the condition of your soils. So even if
oh,
you're
very
using
interesting.
chemicals in your garden and you're killing weeds, you're actually
Hmm.
you're destroying the weeds on a short term. So it's kind of like a quick fix. But what you
Yeah.
don't know is that you're also destroying the whole health of the soil by using those chemicals.
So do you have any recommendations for people who want to create, whether it's a smaller garden or a larger one, and weeds tend to be a problem and they just don't have time to be out there pulling them or, trying to keep things beautiful without the weeds overtaking? What should people do?
Yes, another great question. I have to congratulate you on even daring to ask this question, because I feel like in my industry, nobody dares to talk about it. I often joke about it. It's like, if you ever watched Harry Potter, it's like the
Uh-huh.
Voldemort. It's something you shouldn't talk about, right? And even all the landscaping, not all, but let's say 95% of the landscaping company, garden centers, all those things, nobody wants to talk about weeds because they don't know how to actually solve it. The solutions they provide have a short-term solution, but they're actually making the problem worse. So when you
Yeah.
destroy the health of your soil by using the chemicals, what you're actually telling to Mother Nature is, hey, bring me more weeds, because I'm going to tell it in a different way. What are weeds actually? Weeds are mostly annual plants that have the ability to restore the health of the soil. So every time we go and destroy the soil, not even if you don't use chemicals, you might be like completely tilling your soil. I see a lot of people doing that
Mhm.
because it was how we were supposed to garden. But by tilling the soil, you're destroying the whole structure of the soil. And then Mother Nature
Mhm.
says, oh, this soil is destroyed. It's been disturbed. Could be chemically, mechanically, it doesn't really matter. So let's bring in the weeds, because they are the plants that are capable of restoring the health of the soil. And that's also what I
Mhm.
what I talk about in my award-winning book, is that this is the very foundation of nature. So if we're
Yeah.
trying to fight that, we're always going to lose. And it's actually getting worse and worse over time, also with
Yeah.
climate change and other influences. So to get back to
Mhm.
your question, how, like, okay, this is problem statement, right? Like, okay, we're using chemicals to kill weeds, and it kind of works, but it actually makes the problem worse on the medium to
Yeah.
long term, which that part not many people know about. So how do we then solve it? Well, what I say is, your first thing that you really have to focus on is just like our personal health, the gut health, is the soil health.
Mhm.
You have to get the soil health in order. Then the next question would be, how does a healthy soil look like? I can tell you,
Yeah.
a healthy soil has a ton of microorganisms. They found even in research
Hmm.
now that a small teaspoon of healthy soil has more microorganisms than there are people on the whole planet.
Yeah.
And that's what we want, because these tiny little microorganisms, you need like a microscope to see them. What they actually do is they find nutrients that are in the soil. They will eat it and digest it and maybe change it slightly. And then
Hmm.
they're making it bioavailable for the plants. And that's again, that's how
Ah,
nature has been working for millions of years and how it's been evolving. So if you're trying to work against that, you'll always lose. Mother Nature is always gonna
yeah.
take over. So, but if you focus on creating a healthy soil
Hmm.
by getting more microorganisms in the soil, you'll have healthier
Hmm.
plants. You'll see that your plants will grow way better. They have a better
Hmm.
immune system, the plants that you do want to grow, and then
Yes.
that drastically reduces the maintenance. Because there's another thing that happens. This is all like quite new research. This is like research in the last 5 years. They figured out that plants actually vibrate on a certain frequency, and when they are healthy and vibrant, they vibrate on a high
Hmm.
frequency, and that signals to insects that usually would eat them, like, "Hey, I'm vibing high, leave me alone.
Hmm.
Because if you come and eat me, I'll put toxins in my soil, in my leaves that will actually kill you."
Yep.
So that's the kind of signal that healthy plants are giving to insects. And they're also giving signals to beneficial insects.
Hmm.
"Hey, come to me. There's a beautiful flower here. I need you. Yeah, I need your help for pollination." So they're doing like
Very
both at the
interesting.
same time. They're like
Yeah.
keeping them away and attracting the good ones. So, and that all happens that this is like only when plants are at their best health conditions. Now, then you might be wondering, how do you then actually do it? Well, there's a few ways of doing it. First of all, getting rid of the chemicals is like a first thing.
Huh.
And then you have to focus on improving the soil. There's several ways you can do it, like adding high quality compost to the soil.
Hmm.
And it has to be high quality compost, Tom, because most of the compost that we find in the garden centers are also full of chemicals, which is very disturbing and is not act for your soil. So
Hmm.
there's a whole industry that is actually trying to help gardeners, but they're making the problem worse.
They're putting, yeah. There is, and I've noticed that. I'm not the expert in any of this, but if I go to the home and garden center and I'm looking at some of these things, just some of the things that they add in there on the labeling, I'm like, "Why?" It just doesn't make sense to me, and I prefer to just kind of leave things as they are. If my plants are doing fine, I leave them alone. They're happy. They'll balance themselves with whatever they need, and then they have the natural fertilizers, the ones like if you need a higher nitrogen content or things like this, you can get the basic elements in there, but you don't have to have all these other things
Yeah,
that are in the packaging. Yeah, so that makes perfect sense that if your soil is getting out of balance, then that's going to encourage plant growth that you don't want,
exactly.
which is the weeds like this. So I think that's very valuable information.
Yes. And moreover, even
So,
the
yeah.
weeds, different weeds give you different indications of what's missing in the soil. For example,
Mhm.
dandelions, if you see dandelions overgrowing your garden, it usually means a few things. Like you have a compacted soil, there's too much nitrogen in the soil, and some
Mhm.
minerals are lacking. Because what does a dandelion flower do? It has a really deep taproot, and that's why
Yep.
they're impossible to get rid of in your garden. Because you
Oh,
pull it
yeah.
out, it's just another huge taproot, and it just keeps coming back. So,
Yes, they like it here in Houston. We have lots of them.
oh wow. Well, then that
So,
yeah, we would have to look into your specific garden and see what the problem is with. Probably a lack of certain minerals, and compaction is probably an issue as well.
well, and then there's the soil types too, because where I came from in San Diego, weeds are not a huge problem because they don't get a lot of rain there. And there's a lot of very granite based or decomposed rock type soils. It's very, very hard over there when you're digging in it. Here in Houston, I call it a big mud pit. It's this clay. It's a very deep clay layer. And you really have to amend the soil here. And when they build new housing developments and all of this, they do. They bring in truckloads of this just so they can plant the green lawns and put in some basic landscaping because otherwise it's a very dense clay that has really poor drainage. And with Houston being flat, the drainage is terrible to begin with. But so I think that's something that people run into as well as if they move, they go to a completely new geographic location. Everything about it's going to be different. They might not know what to do. So Do you know of any maybe great websites or resources where maybe people could go? And if you maybe wanted to send those to me, I could include them in the notes to this episode. But just, in case people are going, well, how would I research this online? What would I look for if they want to go more of the natural route
Mhm.
to create a beautiful garden without all of the chemical use and all of that? Do you know of any great
Yeah,
resources
there is
maybe?
some,
Or
but
what
it's
should people
it's
do?
very hard because it's so fragmented. Like this is what I figured out is that everything in the
Yeah.
gardening space is very fragmented. So you might go
Uh-huh.
on YouTube and you find some that work, but then others don't work. And then you have all the things of also
Yeah.
different locations and there's so much
Hmm.
misinformation even. So it's hard for me to tell you like go to that one specific website. And because of that
Yeah.
reason, and there's another reason to it because I had a client that came to me and like we had I'll tell you the story. I had
Hmm.
completely changed probably like quite a big property and we had changed one third of their garden because they had just finished renovation of the house and they wanted to like everything around the house was just a mess. So we redid
Hmm.
all of that area around the house. And my client was like, we're finished. We had a really good relationship. They're happy, all good results. And she goes like, as we're like nearly finished, she's like, or we were finished, I think. She says like, I really like what you did with our garden, but you know what? I'm really done with a landscape architect now. I want to experience what it is for myself. I want to get my hands dirty. Like I see you guys building this garden and I always wanted to help out, but I couldn't because it's a
Hmm.
contractor and they know what they're doing. So the client couldn't really help. But she always said, like, I want to put my hands in the soil and build my own garden from scratch. And I was thinking, like, wow, that's you're right, actually. So from that question that she posed, it was mostly like jokingly. She didn't offend me, of course. But I said, you know what? I'm gonna teach you everything that I know about gardening
Hmm.
and I'm gonna create a masterclass around it. And I'll invite
Oh, wow.
invite a bunch of other people that are interested. And I'm just gonna cut through all the bullshit. And even though bullshit could be good for your garden in some cases, but I'm gonna cut through that, and we're gonna get to the core of like what works, what are the systems
Hmm.
that work, and from that experience, like this is me growing up as a 3 year old. I'm now
Hmm.
33, so I have and I dedicated my life to understanding how nature works. I've written a book about it, and I'm now synthesized it into a 9 week masterclass. They start out and they have like they're overwhelmed. They have all the weeds that are growing in their garden. They also get frustrated because every year in springtime they think this is the year where I'm gonna make the most beautiful garden. They go to that
Hmm.
garden center. They buy those beautiful plants that are by the way they're also chemically like pushed that they grow and look pretty, but they're very unhealthy and then you
Hmm.
buy those stuff and you put it in your garden and it doesn't work. Most of your plants die. And this is like by the time it's summer or earlier, they're like,
Hmm.
oh no, another failure year. And that's the reality
Yeah.
of most people that want to garden or create their own
Hmm.
beautiful garden, but then they don't get the results. And I've seen that oftentimes. So that's why I developed this 9 week masterclass. So not to like say that there isn't anything else. There probably is, but I just found that it's so fragmented that I wanted to
Yeah.
create something that is really full circle. So you learn how to design it, you learn how to design your garden, how to then also build it, how to plant properly, and
Hmm.
also how to maintain it. Because even that maintenance part, which is a big part of the masterclass, again,
Yeah.
most contractors and people in the landscaping industry, they don't want to talk about it. And I was just in Canada and jokingly,
Hmm.
I saw what I was staying at one of my friends' houses, and he had like a landscaper doing the maintenance in their garden. And I was looking
Yeah.
at them, what are they doing? They're like blowing with the blower, they're just blowing through all the plants and removing all the leaves. And I was like looking at it, and I said jokingly to my friend, you know what this guy is doing? He's maintaining your garden so he can keep maintaining it. They think they're doing the right thing, but by doing
Yeah.
that work that he was doing, he's actually increasing the maintenance of the garden. So that he has to keep coming back and back and back, which is, I guess, that's a business model,
Very
but
interesting
it's
point.
not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, there's a whole lot in the landscaping world that here we say in the US that I think is just a big racket. It's a big scam.
Yeah,
And we see these with the commercials that they show here in Houston with all the big, beautiful plants and everything. And most of it'll grow here for a while, but then the summers it gets so hot here, it kills half of what they sell. If you're lucky and you get through a mild winter, you're like, oh, okay, this is doing well. But then next year it might snow here, and we do get a little bit of snow, or it gets cold enough to kill everything. I gave up trying to plant a lot of the stuff. We were lucky in San Diego. Most things in Southern California, you can grow pretty much anything wherever you want. It's very, very easy. The climate's very friendly.
Mhm.
But yeah, you get into the real tropical spaces. You get into the South Floridas and, places like Miami, and it's beautiful to look at, but you're battling the weeds and you're just yeah, there's a whole science to this. There's
Yes.
a whole level of knowledge you have to know. So, yeah, we want to be able to connect people, the right resources like yourself. And this master class that you mentioned, is this something that's available online,
Yeah.
or how do you? I'm just curious because if we can link to it, I would love to.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's completely online because I also think like if I'm gonna have to teach you this like in person, it's gonna be first of all very
Hmm.
expensive, and I won't be able to
Yeah.
replicate it as much. And we are now in the age where we're like after, let's call it the blessings of COVID, where we got so used to working from our home, from our computer. So
Hmm.
I took on the challenge to make it completely online as well. And it actually turns
Very
out to be
cool.
better than if I would have to do it in person because I filmed some stuff in gardens, then we
Hmm.
get together every week so you can ask questions. I also have a WhatsApp support group. So it's really like
Very cool.
full circle. And we have also some interesting innovation that I haven't come across anybody doing that as far as I know.
Hmm.
If someone has, you can
Very good.
happily reach out. But I also integrated an AI system in it. So with that AI system inside of it, that's one of the reasons how I
Mhm.
could compromise it to or like keep it under 9 weeks, let's say under 10 weeks, is that I'm also
Mhm.
leveraging AI. And that also
Very cool.
enabled me to teach this anywhere in the world because I have some
Okay.
fundamentals which are it's also in my book, The 12 Universal Laws
Mhm.
of Nature, because it's universal, it's on the whole planet. Maybe not on the North Pole as much, but then nothing really grows there. But other than that, it's universal. So and then
Mhm.
with the help of AI, you get you get the results for your specific area.
Well, very cool. Well, we'll be sure to link to it
Yes.
because I think there's a lot of valuable information that you can share. Yeah, because people that I talk to, they don't have a clue. They depend on their gardeners. They know how to mow the lawn, but are these people trained in anything? So, okay, before we go into too much time here, is when somebody has a very successful garden, things are going well. Maybe it's not so much of an issue in places like Northern Europe because you guys are very, very used to the cold. A lot of things are landscaped appropriately for the weather there. But when somebody does live in a place, maybe you'll experience this in the Azores. I don't know what winters are like there,
Mhm.
but where winters are rare in a place like Houston,
Yes.
and you've got things going. What do you recommend when you hear about it in the news? The weather's going to change. It's going to get cold. Here in Houston, they are famous for telling people, "Oh, you have to cover your plants," and or if they're bring them indoors or whatever. And I've been in Houston now about 23 years, and what I've learned here, covering your plants does not work. If they're small enough, you can bring them in the house, and that's what my wife and I do. We bring them in the house, put them in the garage for the bigger ones, but covering the plants, you get a lot of leaf damage. A lot of them will still freeze back to the ground. Some of them do grow back. Do you have any recommendations for like people in Belgium who may be planting something that's maybe a little on the tropical side and it's a little iffy with the weather? What would you tell them to do to protect it if it's already in the ground? Any tips or secrets there?
Yes. I think there's a few things that you have to focus on, and they kind of come back
Hmm.
to what I've already said is like when you can fix the health of your soil and the quality of your soil and making sure that your soil is not like completely compacted, your plants are going to be able to make deeper roots. Obviously, there's limits to everything, but maybe they can
Yeah.
handle 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 degrees extra coldness because they're just more established in the soil. And even if they then
Okay.
get damaged above ground, they'll be able to come back better because the roots are
Yeah.
better developed. I think that would be the major thing. And then it's what I would do if I create a garden in your area is that I would focus on maybe having a little bit of a bigger garage that is also
Hmm.
somewhat isolated, and then grow all the amazing plants that are tropical, even Mediterranean, but grow them in pots. You could probably
Hmm.
grow lemons as well, and just arrange myself in such way that I can bring them in my garage or in a area where
Yeah.
it's not freezing.
say that's a very, very good tip because I actually had a very beautiful lemon bush here for years. And then we had a big freeze here. I don't know if you all heard about
Oh
it
yeah,
over
that
there
was
in
in
2021.
21. Yeah, all the pipes
Yeah,
broke, right? That was on the
it
news
was
here.
awful. We could do a whole separate show about how much I hated that because I hate the cold. It killed my lemon tree, so I wasn't happy.
No, yeah, that's
So
wild.
keep them in pots then and keep them portable. That's what I put in my blog posts, and
Yes.
that's what I tell people. Keep them portable.
And then what I would also do is really go, like, really get clear on what your soil conditions are and your what the extremes of the weather are. And then I would only, for the rest of my garden, I would only use plants that can survive those harsh environments. And there it's again,
Yeah.
there's a science, there's a knowledge. You need to understand your soil conditions, soil type, and figure out
Hmm.
what plants can actually handle those extreme weather patterns. And then I would plant those because I'm not pretty sure, I'm 100% sure that there's still a beautiful variety of plants to choose from.
I get all excited about talking about plants because it has been a challenge. I mean, where my office is positioned here, I look out towards the front of our house, and I've got some palms that do survive here. There are actually a few that do. But I've seen plants just come and go, and it's been frustrating, and plants are expensive. I don't know how they are over in Europe when
Yes.
you are really getting into yard spaces and gardens and things like this, but, yeah, it's I yeah, I have to stop trying to make it look like California out here.
No, but
So,
there's ways to do that.
yeah,
You have to just,
yeah.
yeah, study a bit more. But if you want, we can talk offline on it as well.
I'm gonna refer people to your masterclass, and I'll continue doing a little bit of research on my end too, just to see if I can find maybe 1 or 2 good links or YouTube videos or something where people can work to do soil amendment because, here in Houston, it is a problem. But Matthew, I think we'll go ahead. I don't want to take up too much of your time today.
Sure.
It's been so kind for you to join us. So, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and wrap up for today. And once again, a big thank you to you, Matthew, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. Lots of great information there about how to work in your garden and landscaping without the use of chemicals and the importance of soil amendment. Learned a lot there. I know I did. So, yes, to our listeners, we want to thank you too for tuning in, and we invite you to join us over on Patreon, where you can get other great full length episodes of other informative topics that we share that have to do with creating your tropical escape at home. And you can join us over at ceruleanbay.com, where we've got some really great blog posts. We've got our online store and just cool info about how to do everything tropical. So, thanks again, and we will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye bye.